Hello everyone, it's Kik here, and today we have a special episode dedicated to epic smartphone fails that try as you might, you just can't forget. So are you ready? Then settle in comfortably. We're starting. We start with the failure of the Vertu brand. The company's marketing strategy was based on the notion that if someone could afford luxury watches, say from Rolex, then they could also afford a phone in that price range. They made not just expensive smartphones for $2,000, but mega expensive ones with prices that could reach $50,000. Vertu's phones were incredibly recognizable in terms of design. The engineers and top managers at Vertu thought not only about money, but also about the user. For example, the sapphire glass introduced in one of the smartphones in 2013, which did not scratch, break, or wear out practically. By using sapphire, Vertu demonstrated that the buyer was acquiring a very durable product, not an overpriced gadget that would lose its appearance after a couple of years. Few know that the British company implemented the idea of a personal assistant before Apple and Google did. However, the concierge in Vertu phones wasn't a program, but a real person who solved issues. The user would press a button, ask to buy plane tickets or book a hotel, and the company's employee would take care of everything. The device owner only had to cover the service costs, not the secretary's services. Moreover, in the latest Vertu models with a concierge, it was possible to communicate not only via calls but also through texts in a convenient way, whether through email or SMS. The company reached its peak in the early 2000s when premium phones were not much inferior to budget counterparts in terms of basic functions. Then came the iPhone and other brands, which started the slow death of Vertu. The British held out for a while but eventually gave in. Vertu completely switched to Google's operating system. Since Vertu phones were exclusively hand-assembled, they took a long time to manufacture, and smartphones were outdated in terms of hardware and software by the time they were released. Ultimately, customers received smartphones that only looked expensive until the first time they were turned on, at which point the same Android lit up the screen as on a $100 phone. All this led to the British brand laying off more than 200 people and suspending the production of phones. Next, we have a fail called Project Ara, a Google project that was developing a modular smartphone. It was called one of the company's most ambitious ideas. In September 2013, Dave Hackens, a graduate of the Design Academy Eindhoven, published a video with the concept of a modular smartphone called Phone Blocks. The designer presented the idea of a device consisting of a main board and removable modules. According to Hackens' concept, if these modules broke down or became outdated, the user could replace them with new ones. Phone Blocks sparked interest among a huge number of people, and Hackens decided to move forward. He met with several companies interested in creating a modular smartphone and ultimately chose Google's Motorola Mobility division. The development process of the smartphone was first shown at the beginning of 2014. Hackens published a video where he walked around the office, talked with developers, and showed the phone's frame. In mid-April, Project Ara held its first developer conference where it presented the smartphone's design. The team also announced a partnership with Toshiba, under which the latter began developing processors and camera modules for the device. The company wanted to make the phone accessible to the entire world. You don't need to buy a smartphone with a good camera, just buy a good camera for the smartphone. Project Ara decided to demonstrate the phone in action, but it only managed to load half of the lock screen before freezing. The company announced that a pilot launch of the device would take place in Puerto Rico. Google planned to sell smartphones out of vans. The company wanted to turn mobile snack vans into mobile stores to distribute the phones across the country. However, Google completely froze the project without explaining the reasons. There were rumors of serious disagreements between the developers and the company. Either way, the final product never saw the light of day. Continuing the list of fails, IT giant Microsoft in 2010 decided to venture into unfamiliar territory by launching the Kin 1 and Kin 2 smartphones, marketing them as budget gadgets for young consumers and those heavily into social networking. The company announced that the new device would allow users to instantly post messages and photos on social networks. Essentially, by this stage, Microsoft had slightly missed the mark. By 2010, any average smartphone was capable of handling the aforementioned tasks. However, it turned out that the Kin 1 and Kin 2 were specifically the ones that couldn't handle these tasks. Those who dared to purchase them complained that they couldn't use many features of Twitter and other social networks from the smartphones. Moreover, no games or applications were created for the Kin. Consequently, potential consumers never became actual ones. They simply didn't understand what the advantages of this smartphone were. Even Microsoft didn't seem to understand. According to unofficial information, Microsoft managed to sell only about 500 Kin devices, and even half of those buyers were device testers who themselves did not understand what they were supposed to be testing. And since we're discussing giants, who else but Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of the world's largest social network, should have at least tried to create his own smartphone? And he did just that with HTC. Instead of developing their own OS, the company decided to bet on Android. According to their reasoning, this would allow them to immediately cover the maximum audience, which for these companies exceeded 1 billion users. Facebook introduced its own replacement for the home screen to inform the smartphone user of all the latest status updates from friends in a convenient and visual manner, pushing the app a bit further. This feature was called Facebook Home, and along with it, the company introduced a special smartphone, the HTC First. The back cover featured the logos of HTC and Facebook, and it was the only device sold with Facebook Home pre-installed and optimized, an Android shell that completely changed how users interacted with the communicator, making it focused on the social network. With the main screen cover feed replacing both the lock screen and home screen, users could see updates from friends and explore their new photos and posts. Special attention was given to messaging. The Facebook launcher offered a system called Chat Heads, which allowed users to exchange messages through the social network as well as via SMS. Its use was possible even while running other applications. The word head in the name was no coincidence. When new messages arrived, the sender's photo would appear next to them. It was anticipated that the First would be a real discovery and a hit for all active Facebook users. However, this did not happen. According to experts, the carrier AT&T, in whose network the HTC First was available in the USA, sold no more than 10 in units during the month it was available. What went wrong? The HTC First was not attractive enough to draw in Facebook users. In other words, it lacked something special, some unique feature that could showcase the phone in a favorable light among its peers. And Facebook Home was definitely not a breakthrough feature. AT&T even had to drop the price of the HTC First from $99 to 99 cents. It's odd that companies not directly related to smartphones are increasingly desperate to enter this market. One such example is the unusual smartphone Hydrogen One from the well-known camera manufacturer Red. The main feature of the smartphone was the ability to view 3D content without glasses. Unsurprisingly, this generated a lot of hype. The smartphone had a controversial design. For example, its sharp, angular shapes made it difficult to easily slip the gadget into a pocket, and it was priced at around $1,300. This ultimately led to poor sales. The company's founder blamed the Chinese ODM manufacturer, who made poor design decisions, causing the device to fail commercially. Following this, the company's head promised to release a second version of the smartphone with a holographic display. However, these plans were never to come to fruition. The creators of the gadget announced the closure of the project. Let's move on, but first, a subscription to our channel which motivates us to create interesting content. Back in 2007, the leadership at BlackBerry, then known as Research in Motion, RIM, quickly took notice of a new player in the smartphone market. Moreover, they highly regarded the merits of the iPhone. Nonetheless, RIM did not see Apple's brainchild as a threat. The Canadians believed that their customers would not switch their focus to the iPhone as it lacked a keyboard. They also thought that a full-fledged browser allowing users to surf the internet was not the most crucial argument when buying a smartphone. They pointed to the iPhone's weak battery and insufficient security level as well. In short, they were confident that Apple's new product would not be able to lure away their clientele. Later on, of course, RIM realized its mistake. The arguments about the keyboard and others fell away, and the company secured support from Verizon to create a full-fledged competitor to Apple's smartphone. This was to be the BlackBerry Storm. However, the project was not very successful. Verizon insisted on accelerating development, and as a result, the Storm was hastily made. BlackBerry's reputation ensured a strong start in sales, with about 1 million units sold in just 2 months, but ultimately, it backfired against the company. The Storm was far from perfect, and many customers were dissatisfied, wishing to return their devices. The phone's failure cost BlackBerry dearly. The company lost over $100 million, and their relationship with Verizon deteriorated, with customers rapidly switching to Apple. We all know how this turned out for BlackBerry. Have you ever heard of ringing bells and the Indian smartphone Freedom 251 with an unprecedented price tag of just $4? It managed to create quite a stir, despite the gadget initially being available only in India. The hype spread around the world. Ringing bells did not exist before September 2015. It wasn't a rebranding of an old market player. The company literally came out of nowhere. The founder and CEO was someone named Mohit Gaul. The Freedom 251 was developed under the aegis of the government and the ruling party of India, with 95% of its retail sales subsidized by the state budget. Its development occurred in complete isolation from the rest of India's telecommunications market by a company whose history spanned no more than 6 months. Many media outlets tend to consider the Freedom 251 a project of India's Department of Electronics and High Technology, created to control the local telecommunications market. Initially, there were announcements of 50 million pre-orders. However, in reality, between 5,000 and 65,000 devices were released to the market. The exact number has not been disclosed. There were were even rumors that the police had arrested the creator because he had threatened a customer with physical violence. Overall, this story is incredibly convoluted. What are fails without the company Apple and their iPhones? The Cupertino team introduced their version of bending devices long before such gadgets became mainstream. It's just that we misunderstood them. We are talking about the iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus, which, after their release, received a huge number of admiring comments, but also frequent reports of their extremely high flexibility. And it turned out to be true. A large number of owners of the so-called flexible devices, iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus, encountered an unpleasant problem. A gray flickering bar appeared at the top of the display and the touch sensor of the matrix stopped working. It was later revealed that this was due to the touchscreen controller peeling off from the motherboard. Class action documents against Apple stated that the company was well aware that the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus bent much more easily than their predecessors. Nevertheless, the company ignored the problem and released the smartphones for sale. During the design of new devices, engineers discovered that the iPhone 6's body was prone to bending 3.3 times more than the iPhone 5's and the iPhone 6 Plus 7.2 times more. The company conducted internal testing of the smartphones multiple times, confirming a serious flaw in their design, yet it chose not to make any changes. After the release of the gadgets, Apple denied the issue even after widespread user complaints. Only in 2016, almost 2 years after the iPhone 6 was released, did the company begin to reinforce the motherboards with epoxy resin as it had done, for example, with the iPhone 5 and 5S. By that time, there were already several tens of millions of bent or bending-prone devices on the market. And of course, the list of fails wouldn't be complete without mentioning the company Samsung. Let's start with the most explosive smartphone. Correct, we are talking about the Galaxy Note 7. Note 7 smartphones were exploding due to problems with their batteries. In the case of the first batch, the problem was one thing, but with the second batch, it was completely different. The first batch's problem lay in the battery's design itself. Due to a minor defect, the electrodes transformed, leading to a short circuit and causing damage to the insulating layer. This issue in the first batch was only discovered using X-ray technology. Such analysis isn't part of the standard quality check procedure for devices. But because of this incident, Samsung revisited this process and implemented necessary measures. As for the second batch, the problem was already in the manufacturing process. According to Samsung representatives, this occurred due to the rush associated with an unexpectedly high demand for the smartphone. But they were slightly dishonest. There is a high likelihood that the issues with the second batch were linked to a strong desire to release the Note 7 before the iPhone 7, which again led to explosions. The former head of the mobile division, DJ Ko, says that the Note 7 issue was the most painful for him during his years at the company. And another fail from Samsung is the first Galaxy Fold flip phone, whose market debut was accompanied by rather bizarre situations that could have led to the suicide of the developers of this device. Things were so bad that Samsung postponed the release of its flexible smartphone, the Galaxy Fold. This was because for several reviewers who were given the device to test, the smartphone's screen broke down just a couple of days after use. Dieter Bohn from The Verge reported that his phone's screen started malfunctioning after a bulge appeared at the fold. The journalist speculated that debris entering the device might have caused the issue. Steve Kovacs from CNBC had half of his screen stop working. Mark Gurman from Bloomberg encountered a similar issue, and no one could understand why at the time. Samsung tested the durability of the Galaxy Fold with special robots that folded and unfolded the smartphones 200,000 times. These machines applied even pressure across the frame and fold line, unlike real-world conditions where users might bend the device by applying pressure at a specific point. Blogger Marcus Brownlee also faced a problem. His screen became inoperable after he removed a protective film, which turned out to be part of the screen and was not meant to be removed. The developers themselves made a mistake by designing this layer to look like a regular protective film, which led to misunderstandings among users. Ultimately, the main problem with the Galaxy Fold was the lack of protection from dust and small particles getting under the display around the hinge area, which Samsung failed to consider, focusing only on the reliability of the folding mechanism. We hope this account of events helps you better understand the epic failures associated with this device. Don't forget to leave your comments, like, and subscribe to the channel. See you soon!